Welcome to the Fantasy Q&A, where today I will once again be reacting and answering all questions related to fantasy football and all things NFL. It's a weekly video series, and if you have a question that needs to be answered, a hot take for me to react to, or a player you want me to dissect and analyze, leave a comment down below, and follow the channel to see more videos like this one. Got some questions today from the wonderful world of Reddit, so let's just dive right in. Can Devonta Smith be a top 10 wideout now that he is wide receiver 1? Yes. Yes, 100% yes, he's gonna be a top 10 wideout, or at least has the potential to. We all remember what he has done when AJ Brown is not on the field. We all remember how great of a wide receiver he can be when he is not being tied down by incredibly good competition. This is a guy that was drafted top 10 for a reason. He was drafted to be their number 1 receiver. Then they ended up, AJ Brown just kind of fell into their laps because Tennessee didn't want him anymore. And then it sort of worked into, well, AJ Brown's super talented. We kind of have to make him the one. But they've always known how good he was. They've always paid him. And he's still young enough to where you put him in this position, he is going to succeed. AJ Brown is gone. There is a massive target share that needs to be taken, and however they're going to do that with some of their newer weapons, with Mekhi Lemon coming in, you still have Dallas Goedert, maybe you get Eli Stowers involved. However they plan to do it, Dontavian Wicks as well, you know that some of it is going to go back to Devonta Smith, that especially with this new offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, coming in to be on the Eagles, and there seems to be a plan to try to do a bit more shotgun. If that's the case, you have to imagine the years of chemistry and the built-up trust that Jalen Hurts probably should have with Devonta Smith at this point should be incredibly useful. So yes, he is going to be a top 10. Now the only caveat is he's going to be a wide receiver 1. You're probably going to have to draft him as one too. A couple months ago, it might have seemed like, oh, this could sneak through the cracks. He's not being drafted as high. He could be a huge value pick. Not anymore. Fantasy football has wisened up. He is being drafted more around 10 to 15 range. So if you believe that he's going to be a top 10 receiver, you're going to pretty much have to draft him as one. With that being said, I will be happy to be one of the people that will be targeting him, that will be drafting him this season. All right, next question. Will Kenneth Walker improve in Kansas City or struggle? I don't think improve is the right word here. As a lifelong Seahawks fan, I have been watching Kenneth Walker very closely ever since he was drafted by the team. And what I can tell you about him is that he is incredibly talented. I always believed he is probably one of the most talented running backs in the league. He just hasn't always had the chance to show it. He's always been very fast, super elusive, tough to tackle. He can play the power game if he needs to, and he's also a really good receiver. Like, genuinely a lot better than he ever should have been, and we never fully utilized that to his potential. But there were always 2 issues that held him back. One, for years we had a notoriously bad offensive line. I've seen this guy juke left, juke right, go up and down, go all around, just to end up getting 2 yards. It should have been like a negative 7-yard loss. He should have lost 7 yards on a play, and he'll do everything in his power to make sure it's a 2-yard gain. But that happened way too often, and the offensive line never properly set him up for years on this team. The other problem that kept following him was injuries. He has a lengthy injury history. He usually stacks them up throughout a season. Little injuries that just bang him up, it's shoulders, it's groin, it's legs, it's hamstrings, it's everything. He just gets banged up every single season, to a point last year where we just started to split carries with him and Zach Charbonnet. I think Kenneth Walker is a more talented back overall than Zach Charbonnet, but I think part of the reason we did the split was to keep him healthy. And when Zach Charbonnet got hurt, Kenneth Walker stepped up in the playoffs, and guess what? We won a Super Bowl because of him, because he played great when he was the number 1 and he was fully healthy behind a good offensive line. He looked like one of the better running backs in the league. And now he's on Kansas City, who has been desperate for a great running back for years. A guy that can come in and blow up a defense with multiple big runs, like 10 to 15 yard runs multiple times a game. That is something that Kenneth Walker specializes in. That is something he is great in. My fear is the workload. My fear is how is his body going to hold up when he is being given 300 plus carries and maybe getting a big role in the passing game. And they're gonna need to involve him early in the season because Mahomes, is coming off his messed up leg. He's not gonna be able to run a lot. He can't rely as much on being able to evade pressure if the offensive line is not up to it. So you might need to set up this offense in a way to where you need to set up the run. You need to run a bit more than you have to, at least early in the season. If he can find a way to stay healthy, to keep himself at, around 90%, 80 to 90% throughout the whole season, he's not only going to be a top 10 running back, he can find his way into the top tier of running backs. He can get into top 5 if he plays a full healthy season. I just doubt how much he's going to be able to do that. He's going to miss some time. He's going to stack up some injuries. He's going to miss a few games. But if you want to take the risk on a guy that could absolutely just be a super bell cow running back with a lot of talent, I wouldn't mind it. Gonna keep this moving along. Which Bears wide receiver will emerge as the number 1? Well, isn't that the question that everyone wants to know about the Chicago Bears offense right now? Now, of all the receivers they had last season, I could probably say that Rome Odunze was the closest thing they had to a wide receiver 1. He was the one that I think Caleb Williams trusts the most. I think he put the most stock into him and gave him the most opportunities. The problem is he didn't always do a lot with those opportunities last season. The catch rate was pretty low. He would always double the amount of targets versus the amount of catches he would actually receive. A lot of poor stat lines that Rome Odunze had last season were completely reliant on this sort of lack of chemistry that these two had, even though he was the most targeted of all of the receivers. Basically, a lot of people felt really let down by Rome Odunze when they drafted him last season, thinking he was going to be a lot bigger than he actually ended up being. And then the first few weeks of the season, it seemed like he was going to be that huge receiver that was going to take the next step in this offense, and then it really started to fall apart. Now there's stuff coming out about his possible foot injury, which, to be honest, I don't think is as much of a factor as people are putting into it. They think it could be a sort of permanent injury that could follow him throughout the rest of his career. I'm not as concerned, even if he comes out and he's like, okay, maybe I'm not 100% anymore, I'm closer to 90, 95. That's how most players actually are in the NFL. Even if they show up perfectly healthy on a roster, that doesn't necessarily mean they're 100%. The wear and tear of a full football season can affect anybody and everyone. So a lot of people are down on him, but that also means that, coincidentally, because people are so high on this offense, they need to invest in something. So they're investing in Caleb, they're investing in Colston Loveland, and specifically investing in Luther Burden, who has seen a meteoric rise over the course of this offseason, to a point where it's kind of too much, too far, off of too little that we've seen from him. Keep in mind that most of his production came in from the last month of the season, mostly due to injuries to Rome Odunze, to DJ Moore, that were affecting them throughout the later part of the season. With Luther Burden, I just don't think we're there yet, even though you're seeing reports that he's looking great in camp, and some people see him as a wide receiver 1, but I'm not hearing that from the coaches. I'm hearing it from some players, I'm hearing it from some analysts, but I'm not hearing it from the coaches themselves, who I think are still invested in Rome Odunze as a very valuable wide receiver, and for now, because of the amount of time he's been there, I think they still have him as their main wide receiver. I think Caleb Williams still sees him as the wide receiver. Those targets, he was targeting him because he believes in him. There is some sort of rapport there, even if the chemistry isn't as perfect as it should be. Can Luther Burden end up being the wide receiver 1? Of course he can. At any point this season, if he shows that he is outplaying Rome Odunze, if he's starting to get more yardage, starting to get more results off of his targets that he's getting, of course, I think this team will make that slow shift into making Burden the 1, but he's got to play like one. He's got to get to that point. He's got to prove that he can be there. And one last thing, it's also important to remember that Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, these are Ben Johnson's guys. These are guys that he brought in, that he drafted to specifically be a part of this offense. All right, just a couple more questions here. Will CJ Stroud ever return to the promise he showed earlier? I wouldn't hold my breath on it. I'm kind of taking a back seat. I'm not trying to get CJ Stroud anymore, which is crazy after the last couple of seasons because everybody remembers the big rookie season he had, which, to be honest, I think people kind of look back at that with a bit of rose-colored glasses. It was just a few games on its own, not over the course of the whole season, but it was still a great rookie season. And he did have that one game that everyone remembers where it was almost 500 yards and 6 touchdowns against the Buccaneers. And everybody looked at that game and thought, we have one of the new, best quarterbacks in the NFL now. One of the best, pure passers. And we haven't gotten any of that in the last couple seasons, you can blame that on a lot of stuff. You can blame it on a horrible offensive line, and I can see why. You can blame it on the fact that in the last season or two, he hasn't had a lot of great pass catchers outside of Nico Collins. You can blame it on last season that they had one of the worst overall rushing offenses in the NFL. All those you can point at and say that CJ Stroud is just a victim of the circumstances around him. But the only thing is, when I watch CJ Stroud, I don't see a QB that's being held down by everything around him. I don't see a QB trying everything to make work with an offense that is falling apart. I see a guy that's pretty much moving at the exact same level as everything else around him. The last 2 years, he has not had a single great game. Look around. There's not one person playing fantasy football that has ever been like, oh, I thought I was going to lose my week. I thought I was done for. And then CJ Stroud came in and won me my game. I would have been done for if it wasn't for CJ Stroud putting up the numbers that he did. It's like, no, wait, nobody's ever said that. Because in the last 2 years, he has not had almost any games that have ever been like considered great games where it's like, wow, what a good game. What a great game by CJ Stroud. And there's nothing wrong with game managers, but I wouldn't pay a game manager $60 million a year. Can he be more fantasy viable this season? That'll just depend on your expectations and what you expect fantasy viable to be. What is that definition in your mind? Is that definition a top 12 quarterback, a constant QB1 that you're constantly putting in your lineups? I don't think that's going to happen. If he's more of a waiver wire option that you can go to for certain weeks and favorable matchups, I can't say it's impossible. There's a chance this offense could be a little better this season. Maybe the offensive line is not as atrocious as it usually is. Maybe Jaden Higgins steps up a little bit. Maybe having Tank Dell also benefits. Having a guy like that back, a guy that has such a strong connection to CJ Stroud, maybe that's more of a morale boost. Maybe that's extra motivation. Maybe psychologically, that's great for him. But pay attention to the word I used in a lot of those scenarios, maybe. Maybe this could work. Maybe if this happens, maybe if that happens. I still overall think that this offense is probably not going to be good because it hasn't been good in the last 2 years. The only guy that I'm really excited to draft, that I'm going to draft, probably no matter what because of any of this, is Nico Collins. Everybody else, I can sort of take it or leave it, to be honest with you. All right, last question here. Will Jonathan Brooks play meaningful snaps? He absolutely could. By all accounts, it seems like the team, they still want to use him. They still want to bring him in despite the injuries, despite the amount of time that he's missed. Now, isn't that crazy? He's going into his 3rd year and he's essentially a rookie. But he will get good playing time if he plays well. This team has already shown in the past. Look at what happened last year with Rico Dowdle. They will give it to the hot hand. When Rico Dowdle came in and he had multiple games of 200 plus rushing yards, they played it the way they should play it, which is, we're going with the hot hand. We're going to put Rico Dowdle in. And Rico Dowdle took over as the starter. It wasn't until he started to fade away that they started to bring Chuba Hubbard back into the fold and he started to get those touches back. There is a chance, though, that if Jonathan Brooks comes in, fresh legs, looks good, runs well, catches the ball well, then they're going to start giving him more carries. They're going to start giving him more chances to be a pass catcher. They'll give him opportunities if he plays well because that is sort of the established quo that this team has already established in last season. With all that being said, it is still incredibly risky. We have seen almost nothing of Jonathan Brooks over the last few years. He's going to have good reports in training camp. They'll probably say he looks good in practice. He looks twitchy or something. You'll probably see Jonathan Brooks being discussed and taken in like late teens of your drafts, the last 3 to 4 rounds. And I can fully understand why someone would want to take a very high risk, very high reward type prospect. For me, I would stick more to handcuffs that I understand a bit more and I understand the situation a bit more. Maybe like a Blake Corum or a Kenneth Gainwell. I'm sure those guys are probably being taken a little bit higher than Jonathan Brooks, but for me, I'd rather take those names rather than a guy that I just haven't seen on the field almost at all in his career. All right, before I go, there is going to be one more player I will talk about, and this one more player will be randomly generated. And if you want me to talk about a specific player for fantasy for any of these future videos, you can let me know with a comment down below. All right, and that player is going to be Justin Jefferson. Yes. If it were to be a Vikings player, there were only 2 possible players I was hoping it would be, Kyler Murray or Justin Jefferson, because everyone else on the team is not super interesting to talk about at the moment. But Justin Jefferson, What happened last year? That's probably the easiest thing to start with. What happened last year? Which was, nobody's questioning the talent of Justin Jefferson. I still think he is pound for pound maybe the best receiver in the National Football League. But unfortunately, sometimes you are only as good as the guy that is throwing it to you. And last year he had Carson Wentz, he had JJ McCarthy, and he had another guy that I am currently forgetting the name of, but that's okay. And it was honestly more JJ McCarthy than it was Carson Wentz. He did okay with Carson Wentz, but with JJ McCarthy, there was nothing there. I don't know if they just never worked with each other in practice, but he never seemed to target him. He never seemed to go out of his way to try to get the ball to him. He also just couldn't throw the ball to him because he just was not an accurate passer. But now coming into this season, they have brought in Kyler Murray, and I think this is an immediate upgrade for the team. It's definitely a much better option right now than JJ McCarthy, and of all the places Kyler Murray could have gone, this is probably the best place he could have gone to try to revitalize his career, essentially, to try to bring out that Kyler Murray that we saw. Remember that second year Kyler Murray on Arizona where he took them all the way to the playoffs? Get that guy. I want to see that guy on the field. I want to see him brought out by Kevin O'Connell, who could do very, very well with veteran QBs. He's shown it with Sam Darnold. If he can revitalize him in that same way of how he played with Sam Darnold, with Kirk Cousins, even with Daniel Jones, who we never got to see on the field, but Daniel Jones seems to talk about the Vikings a lot, even though he spent very little time there. Work on that connection with Justin Jefferson. That should be your number one concern, getting this guy the ball, because he can make it happen if you do. The only thing that separates Justin Jefferson from the cream of the crop of receivers is the QB situation, because even if Kyler Murray comes in and he performs really well and their connection's really great with Justin Jefferson, that's just a maybe. Because what if it doesn't work? What if all of a sudden they're not winning games and Kyler Murray doesn't look amazing and they put back in the pet project of JJ McCarthy? It will automatically tank Justin Jefferson's value. Again, it's a very volatile question mark that hangs over Justin Jefferson and will hang over him throughout the course of this season. Right now, he's being drafted at the edge of the top 5 or right outside of the top 5, and I kind of have him ranked the same because I'd rather take Puka Nacua, Jamar Chase, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the only real competition is you have to figure out if you like him more than CeeDee Lamb. That's like the 2 wide receivers you have to deal with. At that point, I like Justin Jefferson enough. I've had him on previous seasons, and I believe enough in the talent to where I might take that risk and still try to draft him, but you have to know about the question mark beforehand. He is a late first-round pick that comes with an extremely big, volatile switch that can at any point turn him from a top 5 option to a top 20 option. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support a simpleton like me, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. God bless, and I will see you all next time.